The content of this podcast is provided for general informational purposes only and is not intended as, nor should it be considered a substitute for professional medical advice. Hello, this is Karen Nickel, family nurse practitioner, and you are listening to Itchy and Bitchy, a podcast that provides answers to your many unanswered health questions. In previous episodes, I've talked about my course called The Perimenopause Answer. I would love to have the opportunity to talk to you about the course to see if it is the right fit for you. There is a link on our website, itchyandbitchy.com, and our Facebook page, IMB Podcast, where you can schedule an appointment for a Zoom call with me. I know I have said this repeatedly, but again, this is a Zoom call with me. It is not a webinar. When you make an appointment, I will be sitting at my desk waiting for you to join the one-on-one Zoom call. Okay, let's get rolling on this episode. In my practice and in my course, a very common complaint I heard and now hear is that people have low thyroid symptoms and register that complaint to their provider. So labs are done and they're told that their labs are normal, so no thyroid replacement is needed. Since this is something I hear repeatedly, I thought that some of my listeners may also have had this same experience. So I decided to share some tips that can help support your thyroid so it functions better for you. Let's start by reviewing what the thyroid gland is and what it does. It is a butterfly-shaped gland that is located on the front lower part of your neck. A normal-sized thyroid gland is one that you cannot see or feel. The gland secretes two thyroid hormones. We'll call them for short T4 and T3. T3 is the active thyroid hormone that regulates the metabolism of every cell in the body. So if the thyroid hormone levels are not right, it affects so many symptoms, including the heart, bones, gastrointestinal tract, the central nervous system, and the autonomic nervous system. As a result, when the thyroid hormone levels are not correct, it can result in so many symptoms. There is another hormone involved in the process that is called TSH, or thyroid stimulating hormone, and it is a regulatory hormone that is secreted by the pituitary gland, which is a small peanut-sized gland located near the base of your brain. When T3 and T4 levels are low or too low, TSH is released to send a message to the thyroid gland to produce more of these hormones. An imbalance between them may indicate thyroid issues. So if the TSH, which is a regulatory hormone, and the actual thyroid hormone levels do not balance, do not make sense, it can indicate thyroid issues. There are two main types of thyroid disorders, hypothyroidism and hyperthyroidism. If thyroid levels are too high, we call that hyperthyroidism. Too much thyroid hormone in our body can cause heart racing, bone loss, rapid weight loss, anxiety, tremors, shortness of breath, hair loss, and diarrhea. When thyroid levels are too low, we see opposite type symptoms like weight gain, constipation, hair loss, dry skin, and brain fog. Interestingly, fatigue can happen with both hyper and hypothyroidism. Hypothyroidism, low thyroid, can be caused by iodine deficiency or an autoimmune process called Hashimoto's thyroiditis. I've talked about Hashimoto's in previous episodes. This is a disease process in which the body develops antibodies against the thyroid gland and attacks the thyroid gland tissue. Other problems that can happen with the thyroid include goiters, which is an enlarged thyroid gland, and nodules, which are lumps in the thyroid gland, or thyroiditis, which can cause the swelling of the thyroid gland. The good news is, yes, there is good news. There are things you can do and things you can avoid to maximize the health of your thyroid gland. And guess what? I'll review those right after this quick break. Welcome back. Let's start with diet. Doesn't it always get back to this for all aspects of achieving and maintaining a healthy body? Am I not always talking about diet? You've heard me say this hundreds, if not thousands of times, but here we go. Making some dietary and lifestyle adjustments can be beneficial for the health of your thyroid. One of the most important things you can do to maintain a healthy thyroid gland is to eat a well-balanced diet. As I've discussed before in episodes about gut health, 70% of our immune system is located in our intestines in tissue called gut-associated lymphoid tissue, also known as GALT, G-A-L-T. So, when the gut becomes inflamed, it can trigger an immune response, and there are studies that show that inflammatory trigger plays a role in the development of thyroid disease. To reduce inflammation and keep it in check, your diet should resemble the Mediterranean diet. And this diet typically includes fruits, vegetables, beans, whole grains, fish and seafood, nuts and seed, and healthy oils. To achieve a healthy diet, it is recommended that you have 4 to 5 servings of vegetables and 3 to 4 servings of fruits daily, along with plenty of lean proteins and fatty fish such as salmon, herring, anchovies, and mackerel. Plant-based fats versus animal fats are recommended, including extra virgin olive oil, expeller pressed organic canola oil, sunflower oil, safflower oil, coconut oil, nuts, nut butters, and avocados. And I challenge you to count up and see if you're getting 4 to 5 servings of vegetables every day and 3 to 4 servings of fruits daily. So you might want to just keep track of that. If you haven't heard of expeller pressed canola oil before, it is just a healthier way to extract the oil from the canola seed. There are 2 possible ways to get the oil out of that seed. You either squeeze it out or use a chemical solvent to draw the oil out without using any physical pressure. The seeds are first ground up into a paste. Next, the seed paste is washed with a solvent, usually hexane, to release the stored fat molecules. So this is the solvent type canola oil. It's washed in a solvent, usually hexane, and that helps release the stored fat molecules. Then the solvent must be removed through a heating process. But it doesn't completely remove the hexane. After heating, a dry seed paste and the produced oil remains. Then it goes through a refining process called RBD, which stands for refined, bleached, and deodorized. This step is what gives the oil a light color. Although the solvent method of extraction isn't the healthiest option, it is the most efficient option in that solvent expelling gets 97 to 99% of the oil out of the seed. The method's efficiency is the reason for it being the cheapest option on the market. However, an expeller pressed canola oil is our safest option. At my local grocery store, a 32-ounce bottle of the store brand canola oil that is produced using the solvent method is $3.29. $3.29. And the same quantity of a product called Spectrum's Organic Expeller Pressed Canola Oil is $15.99. So there is a big difference in price, but there is also a big difference in safety. So if you don't want to have hexane in your canola oil, you would want to choose an expeller pressed canola oil. Expeller pressing uses a press to physically squeeze the oil out of the seed rather than using chemicals. With this method, no solvents are used in this process, and therefore there is no chance of having any hexane residue left over. Expeller pressing gets 87 to 95% of the oil out of the seed, and some people claim that as little as 65% is removed. So there is some oil still left over after pressing. Because expeller press method is not the most efficient option, it usually makes this oil more expensive than the solvent expelled standard. You may be asking, well, what about the sunflower and safflower oil you just recommended? Well, a common feature of both sunflower and safflower oil is that they are expeller pressed. This means that the oil is obtained from the seed without using a chemical solvent like hexane. Okay, I sort of went off on a cooking oil jag there, but I'm back on track. In addition to including foods in your diet that I just discussed, there are also foods that you want to avoid, including processed foods. Does that sound familiar? Processed foods that are packed with sugar and preservatives, dyes, or fat-free or sugar-free substitutes. Intestinal inflammation can occur, triggering autoimmune flare-ups when eating processed food items like trans fats, high fructose corn syrup, MSG, and refined sugar. Again, when the gut is inflamed, it jeopardizes our thyroid gland health. Also, eating large amounts, and I mean large amounts, of raw cruciferous vegetables such as cauliflower, cabbage, kale, kohlrabi, watercress, bok choy, and Brussels sprouts can cause thyroid problems. Again, we're talking about large amounts of raw vegetables, raw cruciferous vegetables. There are natural chemicals in those vegetables that can interfere with the production of thyroid hormones. However, if you love these types of vegetables, there is good news. The natural chemicals in these foods that are the thyroid troublemakers are inactivated by cooking or even by light steaming. So you can still eat them for all their very valuable antioxidant and cancer protective effects. You just have to cook them rather than eating them raw. I don't know that I've eaten raw Brussels sprouts. I just don't recall doing that. But anyway, there are supplements that help support a healthy thyroid gland. So that's another thing you can look at. You've probably heard that there's a connection between thyroid health and iodine, which is a nutrient that is essential for the synthesis of thyroid hormones. Across the globe, iodine deficiency is one of the causes of an enlarged thyroid gland and hypothyroidism, low thyroid function. I think I have mentioned this in previous episodes, but I remember growing up in Kansas and seeing adults with large masses on the front of their neck and asking my parents what the heck was going on there. And they would reply, oh, they just have a thyroid goiter. I just remember thinking, even as a kid, that can't be right. Why isn't that getting fixed? In developed countries, foods including table salt, dairy, and bread have been supplemented with iodine, so goiters aren't seen as commonly as they were when I was a little girl. Because of supplementation in foods, it is likely that you are getting enough iodine, but sometimes it does need to be supplemented. It is important to have this level tested before starting an iodine supplement, since too much iodine can cause hyperthyroidism or too much thyroid hormone. Nutritional iodine levels are best checked through a urine test. There are supplements that can help support thyroid health. Selenium and vitamin D have been linked to improved thyroid health. If you haven't had your vitamin D levels checked, you can talk to your healthcare provider about getting that tested and starting appropriate doses of vitamin D3 based on your test results. Healthy vitamin D levels are also key for immune, bone, and breast health. Clinical research shows that taking 200 micrograms daily of the mineral selenium can reduce anti-thyroid antibodies. Those are the antibodies we see in Hashimoto's. As an alternative to taking a selenium tab each day, you can get 200 micrograms of this mineral by eating 2 Brazil nuts every day. I love Brazil nuts. When my husband buys bags of mixed nuts, I am guilty of picking out and eating all of the Brazil nuts out of the mix. He never gets one of them. Glutathione, an amino acid that is a powerful antioxidant, often referred to as the master antioxidant, can also help with maintaining a healthy thyroid gland, especially in those with Hashimoto's thyroiditis. One study showed a significant reduction in glutathione levels in those people with Hashimoto's, and that having decreased glutathione levels is a factor in developing oxidative stress and decreasing immune tolerance. Another study supported the finding that diminished glutathione levels is one of the events that eventually leads to oxidative stress in those with Hashimoto's. Another supplement to consider adding to your regimen is a probiotic, which can help with modulation of the immune system, improve gut motility, and improve leaky gut. All of these benefits can help reduce inflammation and autoimmune responses in the body. Look for over-the-counter blends that contain an active culture of Saccharomyces boulardii and Lactobacillus acidophilus. One brand that contains both of these cultures is Nexa Biotic Advanced Probiotics. I'm going to say that again, Nexa Biotic Advanced Probiotics. The company states that the product is made in the USA in an FDA-inspected GMP, which is Good Manufacturing Practices, and NSF, National Science Foundation facility, a GMP and NSF facility. Finally, try your best to avoid environmental toxins. Long-term exposure to endocrine disruptors, those are chemicals that interfere with your body's endocrine system, and your thyroid's part of that endocrine system, may trigger endocrine problems in humans. A few to be aware of are perfluorinated chemicals. Those are called PFCs. PFCs are synthetic chemicals that repel both water and oil. These chemicals can be found in things such as carpets, waterproof clothing, firefighting foams, non-stick cookware, which a lot of us use, and leather products. PFCs have been linked to thyroid disease in previous studies. Researchers have also found that exposure to phthalates found in fragrance products and soft plastics and bisphenol A found in some hard plastics and canned food linings, although many manufacturers are removing them, I have to say. Those things could cause disruptions in thyroid hormone levels. Avoiding antibacterial soaps that contain triclosan is also recommended. Triclosan is an ingredient that has altered hormone regulation in the studies of animals, and human studies are currently ongoing. Although it would be impossible to avoid these things completely, the key is to reduce your exposure as much as you can, especially if you're pregnant or have little ones in the house. Developing fetuses, infants, and children are much more vulnerable to any effects of environmental chemicals. The fewer ingredients in a product, the better. Just use soap and water to wash your hands instead of antibacterial or fragrance soaps. If you desire a fragrance, use essential oils. Another good way to avoid exposure to toxins, you can choose more fresh or frozen foods over canned. You can store food in porcelain or glass rather than plastics, and keep your home well ventilated. The good news is there are ways to work on the health of your thyroid beyond standard medical treatments, such as making changes to your diet, adding supplements if necessary, and avoiding certain environmental toxins. But ultimately, if you suspect you have a serious thyroid problem, consult a healthcare provider so it can be evaluated and treatment options can be initiated if needed. Thank you for listening and for sharing the podcast with others. If you listen using the Apple Podcast app, please write a review and rate the podcast. Your reviews matter. I encourage you to visit our Facebook page, IMB Podcast, where you can leave comments or questions for me. Our website is itchyandbitchy.com, where there are blogs on the site with some of our subjects available for you to read. On the Facebook page and the website, we have the information about how to schedule an appointment with me. It's not a webinar, with me, so we can chat about how my perimenopause course can help you if you are going through this phase in life. As always, Thanks to Forrest Wenzel, our producer and composer of our theme music, and the person who does all the behind-the-scenes work to make this podcast possible. Also, happy birthday, Forrest. Thank you so much. Check out his album called An Awful Lot. Go to wherever you stream your favorite music to listen. And if you don't know where to stream music, you can find the album on Apple Music or Spotify. Remember, your health is in your hands.